The sun beat down on Fort Carson like a hammer on an anvil. Staff Sergeant Emily Cross stood at attention in front of the operational briefing room, her boots polished to a mirror shine, her uniform pressed sharp enough to cut glass. But none of that mattered to the men staring at her through the window. "That's the new sniper?" Sergeant First Class Derek Hollis muttered, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed. "She looks like she weighs 100 pounds soaking wet. Probably can't even carry her own rifle," another voice added. Laughter rippled through the room. Emily heard none of it. She'd trained herself long ago to tune out the noise, the doubt, the whispers. She kept her eyes forward, her jaw set, her breathing steady. She'd been here before. Different base. Different faces. Same old song. Inside the briefing room, Colonel James Ryder stood at the head of the table, his weathered face impossible to read. He was a man carved from granite, a 30-year veteran who'd seen combat in 3 different wars. He didn't waste words and he didn't tolerate fools. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice cutting through the chatter like a blade. "That's enough." The room went silent. "Staff Sergeant Cross will be joining this unit effective immediately," the colonel continued. "She comes to us from Fort Bragg with a record that speaks for itself. You will treat her with the same respect you'd show any operator in this room. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir," came the half-hearted chorus, but Emily knew better. Respect wasn't given in places like this. It was earned. And she'd have to earn it all over again. The mission briefing was straightforward. A high-value target had been spotted in a remote compound 40 miles outside Kandahar. Intel suggested he was planning an attack on a coalition convoy scheduled to pass through the region in 72 hours. The team would insert at dawn, set up overwatch, and neutralize the threat before he could move. It was a textbook operation. But textbook didn't mean easy. Emily sat near the back of the room, her notebook open, her pen moving in quick, precise strokes. She noted wind patterns, elevation changes, possible escape routes, details the others might overlook. Details that could mean the difference between mission success and body bags. Hollis caught her eye from across the room and smirked. "You taking notes for a school project, Cross?" A few men chuckled. Emily didn't look up. "Just making sure I don't miss anything, Sergeant." "Don't worry," Hollis said, leaning forward with mock concern. "We'll keep you safe out there. Maybe let you carry the ammo." More laughter. Colonel Ryder's voice cracked like a whip. "Hollis, one more word and you're off this op." "Test me." Hollis's smirk faded. "Yes, sir." Emily's pen never stopped moving. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling, the weight of 1,000 memories pressing down on her chest. She thought about her father, a Marine sniper who'd taught her to shoot before she could ride a bike. She thought about the day he died in Fallujah when she was 16. She thought about the promise she'd made at his grave. "I'll make you proud, Dad, I swear." She'd enlisted the day she turned 18, fought her way through basic, pushed herself harder than anyone else just to be seen as half as good. She'd earned her sniper tab, earned her place. But no matter how many targets she hit, no matter how many lives she saved, there were always men like Hollis who looked at her and saw weakness. She rolled onto her side and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she'd prove them wrong. Again. The helicopter touched down just before sunrise. The team moved in silence, shadows against the pale orange sky. Emily carried her rifle, a custom M110 she'd named Reaper, with the ease of someone who'd been born holding it. Every step was deliberate, every breath controlled. They hiked 3 miles to the overwatch position, a rocky ridge overlooking the target compound. Hollis set the pace, pushing hard, glancing back every few minutes to see if Emily was struggling. She wasn't. When they reached the ridge, the team spread out. Emily found her nest, a cluster of rocks with clear sightlines and natural cover. She set up Reaper with practiced efficiency, checking her scope, calculating distance, adjusting for wind. Hollis settled in 20 yards to her left with his spotter. He keyed his radio. "All units, Overwatch 1 in position." "Overwatch 2 in position," Emily said calmly. Hollis glanced over at her, surprise flickering across his face. She was already locked in, scope to her eye, breathing slow and even. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. Heat shimmered off the rocks. Emily didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't complain. Hollis shifted uncomfortably, wiping sweat from his brow. His spotter yawned. Emily remained still as stone. At 1400 hours movement contact, Emily whispered into her radio. Single male military age northeast corner of the compound. Armed AK-47. Confirmed, Hollis said, swinging his rifle around. I've got eyes on. Wait, that's not our guy. Negative, Emily said, but he just signaled someone inside. Stand by. She watched. Waited. Her finger rested gently on the trigger guard, her heartbeat steady. Then she saw him. A man stepped out of the main building. Tall, bearded, wearing a dark vest. Intel had provided a photo. This was him. The target, I have positive ID, Emily said. Target is in the open. Northeast courtyard. Range 870 meters. I don't have a shot, Hollis said, frustration creeping into his voice. Too many obstacles. I have a shot, Emily said. There was a pause. Cross, are you sure? Colonel Ryder's voice came through the comms from the command post. That's a long shot with a lot of variables. Emily's breathing slowed. The world narrowed to a tunnel. Wind 3 knots left to right. Elevation compensated. Target moving slowly, predictable. I'm sure, sir, she said. Another pause. Take the shot, the colonel said. Emily's finger moved to the trigger. She exhaled halfway. Held it. The world went silent. She squeezed. The rifle bucked. The round flew 870 meters away. The target dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. Target down, Emily said, her voice flat, emotionless. The radio exploded with chatter. Confirmation, exfiltration orders, celebration. Hollis stared at her, his mouth hanging open. Emily calmly began breaking down her rifle. Lucky shot, Hollis muttered. Emily didn't answer. She didn't need to. The flight back to base was tense. The team sat in silence, the rhythm of the helicopter blades the only sound cutting through the cabin. Emily sat near the rear, her rifle case resting across her lap, her eyes fixed on nothing in particular. Hollis sat across from her, arms crossed, jaw working like he was chewing on something bitter. He hadn't said a word since they'd left the ridge. His spotter, a young corporal named Hayes, kept glancing between them like he was waiting for something to explode. Colonel Ryder sat up front, headset on, his face unreadable as always. When they touched down, Emily was the first one out. She didn't wait for praise. Didn't expect it. She grabbed her gear and headed straight for the armory to clean her weapon. Behind her, she heard Hollis's voice, low and sharp. I'm telling you, man, that shot was pure luck. Wind could have shifted. Target could have moved. She just got lucky. Emily kept walking. The armory was empty. She liked it that way. She set Reaper on the workbench and began the familiar ritual of disassembly. Bolt, barrel, trigger assembly, each piece laid out with precision. Her hands moved on autopilot while her mind drifted. She thought about her first deployment, Afghanistan, 2016. She'd been attached to an infantry unit as their designated marksman. The platoon sergeant had made it clear he didn't want her there. Called her a liability, a distraction. He'd tried to keep her off patrols, stuck her with paperwork and inventory duty, until the day they got pinned down in a village outside Helmand, Taliban fighters on the rooftops. The platoon trapped in a kill zone, casualties mounting. Emily had climbed to a second-story window, set up her rifle, and systematically eliminated 7 hostiles in 4 minutes. Every shot clean. Every shot counted. The platoon sergeant never questioned her again, but there was always another Hollis. Another man who needed convincing. She was tired. So tired, but she kept cleaning her rifle. The debrief came 2 hours later. Emily sat in the same briefing room where she'd been mocked just 24 hours earlier. This time the energy was different. Quieter. The men didn't look at her directly, but she could feel their eyes sliding her way when they thought she wasn't watching. Colonel Ryder stood at the front, hands behind his back. Mission accomplished, he said simply. Target eliminated. No friendly casualties. Textbook operation. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. Staff Sergeant Cross, your shot was exceptional. Range, wind conditions, and target movement all factored. That was expert-level marksmanship. Emily nodded once. Thank you, sir. However, the colonel continued, one successful mission does not make a career. Tomorrow we begin training rotations. I expect every member of this unit to perform at the highest level. No exceptions. His eyes landed on Hollis. Understood, sir, Hollis said, his voice tight. Dismissed, the colonel said. The men filed out. Emily stood to follow, but the colonel's voice stopped her. Cross. A word. She turned back. The room was empty now except for the two of them. Colonel Ryder studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. You handled yourself well out there, he said finally. Just doing my job, sir. I know what you're doing, he said quietly. I see it every day. You're working twice as hard to get half the credit. You think if you're perfect, they'll stop doubting you. Emily said nothing. Let me tell you something, the colonel continued. Some of these men will never respect you. Not because you're not good enough, but because they're scared. Scared that a woman can do their job better than they can. Scared of what that means. Permission to speak freely, sir. Granted. I don't need their respect, Emily said. I need them to trust me when it counts. That's all. Colonel Ryder almost smiled. Almost. Good answer, he said. Dismissed. That night in the chow hall, Emily sat alone. It wasn't by choice, not really. She'd tried sitting with the team once back at Bragg. The conversation had died the moment she sat down. After a few minutes of painful silence, she'd taken her tray and moved. She learned her lesson. Now she sat at a corner table, earbuds in, picking at her food while she reviewed her shot log on her tablet. Every shot she'd ever taken in training and combat. Distance, conditions, outcome. She studied them like a priest studying scripture. Mind if I sit? She looked up. It was Hayes, Hollis's spotter. Young kid, maybe 23, with an eager face and nervous energy. Emily pulled out one earbud. It's a free country. Hayes sat down, setting his tray across from hers. He didn't say anything at first, just started eating. Emily waited. That shot today, Hayes said finally. That was incredible. I've been spotting for Hollis for 8 months, and I've never seen anything like that. Hollis is a good shot, Emily said neutrally. He's good, Hayes agreed. But you're better. Emily didn't respond. Hayes leaned in, lowering his voice. Look, I know he's been giving you a hard time. He does that with everyone new. But after today, I don't know. I think it got to him. You made him look bad. That wasn't my intention. I know, but that's how he sees it. Hayes hesitated. Just watch your back. Hollis doesn't like being shown up. Emily met his eyes. Thanks for the warning. Hayes nodded and went back to his food. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Can I ask you something? Hayes said. Shoot, how'd you get so good? Emily set down her fork. She thought about her father. The endless hours at the range, the way he'd taught her to read wind in the trees, to control her breathing, to become one with the rifle. Practice, she said simply. 10,000 hours of practice, that's it. That's it. Hayes looked disappointed, like he'd been hoping for some secret technique. Emily almost smiled. And one more thing. What? When you pull that trigger, you have to believe. No doubt, no hesitation. You have to know the round will go exactly where you send it. The moment you doubt, you miss. Hayes nodded slowly, absorbing that. Thanks, Sergeant, he said. Call me Emily. His eyes widened slightly. Really? When we're off duty, yeah. For the first time since she'd arrived at Fort Carson, Emily felt something close to hope. The next morning, training rotations began. The unit was divided into pairs, running through urban combat scenarios, close quarters drills, and long-range shooting exercises. Emily was paired with Hollis. Of course she was. They drove out to the range in silence. Hollis gripped the steering wheel like he was trying to strangle it. Emily stared out the window, watching the Colorado landscape roll by. When they arrived, Hollis practically threw the vehicle into park. Let's get this over with, he muttered. The exercise was simple. A series of targets at varying distances, from 200 to 1,000 meters. Each shooter would take 5 shots. Highest combined score wins. Hollis went first. He was good. Emily had to admit that. His shots were clean, controlled. 4 hit center mass. 1 shot just outside the kill zone at 900 meters. Solid performance. Then it was Emily's turn. She settled into position, her body relaxing into the familiar geometry of the rifle. Breathing slowed. Heartbeat steadied. 5 shots. 5 targets she fired. When the range officer called the scores, Hollis's face went white. Emily had put all 5 rounds dead center. Perfect score. Lucky, Hollis said through gritted teeth. Run it again, Emily said calmly. What? Run the exercise again. Let's see if it's luck. The range officer looked at Hollis. Sergeant? Hollis's jaw worked. Fine, reset the targets. They ran it again. Emily shot perfect again and again and again. By the fourth round, Hollis threw his rifle down and walked away, his hands clenched into fists. Emily calmly cleared her weapon and stood. The range officer, a grizzled master sergeant named Torres, walked over to her. That was something else. Cross, he said quietly. Thank you, Master Sergeant. You just made an enemy. I know. Torres studied her. Was it worth it? Emily thought about that. About all the times she'd been told to sit down, shut up, stay in her lane. About every man who'd assumed she couldn't do the job. Yeah, she said. It was. That night, Emily was walking back to her quarters when she heard voices behind the motor pool. She wouldn't have paid attention except she heard her name. She stopped, moved closer, stayed in the shadows. I'm telling you, something's not right. It was Hollis's voice, low and angry. Nobody's that good. Not without help. What are you saying? Another voice. She couldn't place it. I'm saying maybe she's got an edge. Performance enhancers. Something to steady her hands, slow her heart rate. That's a serious accusation, Hollis. Then let's test her. Random drug screening. If she's clean, fine. But if she's not... Emily's blood ran cold. She stood in the darkness, fists clenched, listening to them plot. And she realized something. This was never going to end. No matter how good she was. No matter how many times she proved herself. There would always be men like Hollis looking for a reason to tear her down. She turned and walked back to her quarters, her mind racing. She had a choice to make. Emily didn't sleep that night. She lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying Hollis's words over and over. Performance enhancers. Random drug screening, it was a lie. A desperate attempt to discredit her. But that didn't matter. In the military, even the accusation could destroy a career. Once the whisper started, it spread like wildfire. Even if she tested clean, which she would, the doubt would linger. She'd seen it happen before. A female intelligence officer at Bragg accused of sleeping her way to a promotion. The investigation cleared her. But the damage was done. Men stopped taking her seriously. Stopped including her in briefings. She transferred out 6 months later. Her career effectively over. Emily sat up, her jaw set. She wasn't going to let that happen. If Hollis wanted a fight, she'd give him one. But on her terms. The next morning, Emily went straight to Colonel Ryder's office. She knocked once, sharp and clear. Enter, came the voice from inside. She stepped in and saluted. Sir, I'm requesting a formal drug test today. Colonel Ryder looked up from his paperwork, one eyebrow raised. That's an unusual request, Staff Sergeant. I'm aware, sir. But I want it on record. Full panel, blood and urine. I want there to be zero doubt about my performance. The colonel leaned back in his chair, studying her. What's this about, Cross? Emily hesitated. She could tell him about Hollis's conversation. Get ahead of it. But that felt like weakness. Like she needed protection. I want to remove any questions about my abilities, sir, she said instead. I've faced doubt my entire career. I'd like to eliminate one possible excuse. Colonel Ryder was quiet for a long moment. You know, he said finally, if you request this test and someone else requested it later, it might look like you were trying to flush your system. Sir, I've never used performance enhancers in my life. I'm not worried about the results. I'm worried about the whispers. The colonel nodded slowly. All right, I'll arrange it. You'll be tested this afternoon. Thank you, sir. As she turned to leave, the colonel spoke again. Cross? Yes, sir. Someone's been talking, haven't they? Emily met his eyes. Nothing I can't handle, sir. That's not what I asked. She stood at attention, silent. Colonel Ryder sighed. Dismissed. Word spread fast. By lunchtime, the entire unit knew Emily had requested a drug test. The reactions were mixed. Some of the younger soldiers, like Hayes, seemed confused. Why would she volunteer for that? Others, like Hollis, looked nervous. Emily went about her day as if nothing had changed. She ran her PT in the morning, hitting every standard with room to spare. She attended the afternoon briefing on upcoming training exercises. She cleaned her weapon in the armory, and at 1600 hours she reported to the medical facility. The test was thorough. Blood drawn, urine sample collected under observation, hair follicle sample taken. The medic, a female captain named Silva, worked in professional silence. "Results in 48 hours, Silva said as Emily prepared to leave. "Thank you, ma'am." Silva hesitated. "Can I ask why you requested this?" Emily considered her answer. "Because I'm tired of fighting ghosts, ma'am. I'd rather fight facts." Silva nodded, something like understanding in her eyes. "Good luck, Sergeant." The next 2 days were strange. Emily could feel the tension in the air, thick as smoke. Men watched her differently, some with curiosity, some with suspicion, a few with something that might have been respect. Hollis avoided her entirely. She used the time to prepare for the upcoming advanced training rotation. The unit would be participating in a joint exercise with Special Forces, a mock hostage rescue, scenario at a specially designed urban warfare facility, 2 hours north of the base. Emily studied the facility layout, memorizing every angle, every possible sniper position. This would be her chance to prove herself not just as a shooter, but as a tactical operator. On the morning of the second day, Colonel Ryder called her into his office. The test results sat on his desk in a manila folder. "Have a seat?" "Cross," he said. She sat, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. The colonel opened the folder and scanned the contents. His face revealed nothing. "Clean," he said finally. "Every panel. Not even caffeine in your system." "Yes, sir." He closed the folder and looked at her. "You know this won't stop the talk." "I know, sir. But now it's on record. Anyone who questions my performance can reference this test. And if they say you timed it, that you were clean for this test but not others." Emily's jaw tightened. "Then I'll request another test, sir. And another. As many as it takes." Colonel Ryder leaned back in his chair. "You shouldn't have to do this. You know that, right? With respect, sir, what I should or shouldn't have to do doesn't matter. This is the reality. I can either let it break me or I can use it. Use it how? Every time someone doubts me, I get stronger. Every test I pass, every shot I make, every mission I complete, it's all evidence. Eventually, the evidence becomes overwhelming." The colonel was quiet for a moment. Then he did something Emily had never seen him do. He smiled. "You remind me of someone," he said. "Sir? My daughter. She's a helicopter pilot. Flies Apaches. Best in her unit." His expression softened slightly. "She fights the same battles you do. Every single day." Emily didn't know what to say. "The joint exercise is in 3 days," the colonel continued, his professional demeanor returning. "I'm assigning you as primary sniper for the operation. Hollis will be your backup." Emily's eyes widened slightly. "Sir, that might cause—" "I don't care what it causes," the colonel interrupted. "You're the best shot in this unit. Probably the best shot on this entire base. It's time everyone else figured that out." "Yes, sir." Dismissed. Emily stood, saluted, and left the office. In the hallway, she allowed herself a moment. Just one. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then she got back to work. The news hit the unit like a bomb. Hollis heard it from Hayes, who'd heard it from the operations sergeant. His face went from red to purple in about 3 seconds. "Primary sniper?" he shouted, slamming his fist on the table in the common area. "I've been with this unit for 3 years. She's been here 3 weeks. "Colonel's decision," Hayes said nervously. "It's not personal, man. The hell it's not." Hollis paced like a caged animal. "This is because of that drug test. She made us all look bad, like we were accusing her of something." "You were accusing her of something," Hayes said quietly. Hollis spun on him. "Whose side are you on?" "I'm not on anyone's side. I'm just saying, maybe she earned it." "Earned it? With one lucky shot?" "It wasn't one shot. It's been every shot. At the range, during drills and combat. She doesn't miss, Hollis. You've seen it yourself." Hollis's jaw worked. His hands clenched and unclenched. "This isn't over," he muttered. Training for the joint exercise was intense. The scenario involved a 3-story building held by simulated terrorists with 6 hostages inside. The Special Forces team would breach and clear. Emily's job was to provide overwatch, eliminating any threats that tried to escape or reinforce. It was exactly the kind of high-pressure, high-stakes environment she excelled in. The team ran through the scenario twice a day for 3 days. Emily positioned herself on a rooftop 300 meters from the target building. Her rifle trained on every exit point. During the first run-through, 3 simulated terrorists tried to escape through a back door. Emily tagged all 3 with marking rounds before they made it 5 feet. During the second run, A simulated sniper appeared in a third-story window. Emily identified and neutralized the threat in under 2 seconds. By the third day, even the Special Forces operators were impressed. "Who's the girl on the roof?" one of them asked during a break. "Staff Sergeant Cross," Colonel Ryder said. "Our primary sniper." The SF operator, a grizzled master sergeant with a chest full of ribbons, looked genuinely surprised. "She's good. Real good. She's the best," the colonel said simply. Hollis, standing nearby, looked like he wanted to put his fist through a wall. The night before the final exercise, the one that would be observed and graded by senior command, Emily was doing a final check of her equipment when Hayes approached her. "Hey," he said, glancing around nervously. "Can we talk?" "What's up?" Hayes lowered his voice. "It's Hollis. He's planning something." Emily's stomach tightened. "What kind of something?" "I don't know exactly, but I heard him talking to a couple of guys earlier. He said something about making sure tomorrow goes the way it's supposed to." "Meaning?" Hayes shook his head. "I don't know, but it didn't sound good. I thought you should know." Emily studied the young corporal. "Why are you telling me this?" Hayes met her eyes. "Because it's not right. You earned your spot. Whatever Hollis is planning, it's not about the mission. It's about his ego." He hesitated. "You've been good to me. Treated me like I matter. Hollis never did that." Emily put a hand on his shoulder. "Thanks, Hayes, I'll be ready." After he left, Emily sat alone in the armory, her mind racing. Whatever Hollis was planning, she'd have to be perfect tomorrow. No mistakes. No hesitation. She checked her rifle one more time. Reaper was ready. So was she. Dawn broke cold and clear over the urban warfare facility. Emily arrived an hour early, before the rest of the team, before the observers, before anyone. She climbed to her designated overwatch position on the rooftop and began her pre-mission ritual. Check the rifle. Test the scope. Calculate distances to every door, every window, every possible angle. She noted wind direction, temperature, barometric pressure. Every variable mattered. But she also did something else. She checked her equipment for tampering. The conversation Hayes had overheard played in her mind. Hollis was planning something. She didn't know what, but she wasn't taking chances. She inspected every part of her rifle. The scope mounting tight and secure. The barrel clean. The magazine properly loaded with marking rounds. She checked her radio, her spare batteries, her rangefinder. Everything seemed normal, but the unease remained. By Oro 700 hours, the rest of the team had arrived. Emily watched from her perch as they geared up below. Hollis moved with exaggerated confidence, laughing too loud, slapping backs like he didn't have a care in the world. But she saw the way his eyes kept drifting up to her position. Colonel Ryder arrived with the observer team, 2 generals and a handful of senior officers. This was a high-profile exercise. Careers could be made or broken here. The radio crackled to life. "All units. Comms check," the operations officer announced. "Overwatch, check," Emily said clearly. "Breach Team Alpha, check. Breach Team Bravo, check," one by one. The teams reported in. "All units, this is Colonel Ryder. You have 30 minutes until scenario start. Use it wisely. Good hunting." Emily settled into her position, becoming one with the rifle, the rooftop, the morning air. She was ready. At 7:30 hours, the scenario began. "Overwatch, this is Breach Leader. We are moving to the assault point. Confirm your status." Emily scanned the target building through her scope. 3 stories. Multiple windows. 6 access points. She could see movement inside, role players simulating terrorists. Overwatch confirms all quiet. "You are clear to approach." The breach teams moved like shadows, flowing toward the building in tactical formation. Emily's scope swept continuously, searching for threats. Then she saw it. 3rd floor window, east side. A figure with a rifle setting up position. "Breach Leader, this is Overwatch. I have a simulated sniper, 3rd floor east. He has eyes on your approach. Can you neutralize?" Emily's crosshairs settled on the target. "Range 280 meters. Slight crosswind. Target partially concealed behind window frame. Difficult shot, but manageable." Confirmed. Taking the shot. Her finger moved to the trigger. Breathing slowed. Heartbeat steadied. She squeezed. The marking round flew true, hitting the role player center mass. He raised his hands and stepped back from the window, signaling he was dead. "Threat neutralized," Emily reported. "Good shooting, Overwatch." Proceeding with breach. The teams reached the building. Explosives simulated by flashbangs detonated at the main entrance. The operators flooded inside. Emily's job now was to watch the exits, prevent escapes, identify threats. For 3 minutes, everything went according to plan. Then her radio died. No warning. No static, just silence. Emily's pulse quickened. She pulled the radio off her vest, checked the battery connection. It looked fine. She switched to her backup channel. Nothing. She keyed the mic. Breach leader, this is Overwatch. Radio check. Silence. And then she understood. This was Hollis's play. He'd sabotaged her radio, cut her off from the team. Without comms, she couldn't provide updates, couldn't coordinate, couldn't do her job. She'd look incompetent in front of the generals. For a moment, just one moment, panic threatened to take hold. Then Emily took a breath and made a decision. She didn't need a radio to do her job. She had eyes. She had a rifle. And she had a mission. Emily refocused on the building. Without comms, she couldn't hear what was happening inside, but she could see. And what she saw made her blood run cold. 2 role players, simulated terrorists, were moving toward the west exit, the one furthest from the breach teams. They were flanking, trying to get behind the operators. In a real scenario, they'd open fire from behind, kill the entire team. Emily's crosshairs found the first target. She fired, hit. The role player raised his hands. Second target. Moving fast now, realizing his partner was down. Emily tracked him, led him slightly, compensated for his speed. Fired. Hit. Both threats down. But the teams inside didn't know. Without her radio, she couldn't tell them they'd just been saved. Emily kept scanning. North exit. Another threat. This one had a simulated RPG. She fired. Hit south window. Sniper position. Fired. Hit. She moved like a machine, identifying and eliminating threats with ruthless efficiency. Every shot counted. Every shot landed. Inside the building, the breach teams were moving through the scenario, unaware that their Overwatch had gone silent. Unaware that Emily was still working, still protecting them. Hollis, positioned as backup sniper on a lower rooftop, watched through his scope. He'd expected Emily to panic when her radio died. Expected her to abort, to climb down and try to fix the problem. He'd switched her radio battery for a dead one while she'd been in the final briefing. It had been easy. A moment of distraction, a quick swap. She was supposed to fail, but she wasn't failing. He watched in growing disbelief as she continued to engage targets. Her shots perfect, her movements calm. What the hell? He muttered. His spotter, a different soldier today, not Hayes, looked at him. What's wrong? Nothing, Hollis snapped. Just watch your sector. The scenario ran for 15 minutes. By the time the breach team secured the hostages and cleared the building, Emily had engaged 12 targets. 12 shots. 12 hits, all without radio communication. When the all-clear was called, Emily safed her weapon and climbed down from the rooftop. Her face was calm, but inside her heart was pounding. Colonel Ryder was waiting at the bottom. Staff Sergeant Cross, he said, his expression unreadable. Your radio was silent for the entire operation. What happened? Radio failure, sir. I believe the battery was defective. And yet you continued the mission. Yes, sir. I could still observe. I could still engage threats. I saw no reason to abort. One of the generals, a stern woman with silver hair and 3 stars on her collar, stepped forward. Let me see that radio, she said. Emily handed it over. The general examined it, then popped out the battery. She held it up to the light, then pulled a small testing device from her pocket. She tested the battery. Her expression darkened. This battery is completely dead, she said. Not drained, dead, like it was never charged. She looked at Colonel Ryder. When was this radio last serviced? All radios were checked this morning, ma'am, the colonel said. I supervised it personally. The general's eyes narrowed. So between this morning's check and the mission start, this battery went from fully charged to completely dead? That would seem unlikely, ma'am, the colonel said carefully. The general looked at Emily. Staff Sergeant, do you have any idea how this happened? Emily met her gaze. She thought about Hayes's warning, about Hollis's sabotage. She could tell them. Right now. Burn Hollis and be done with it. But something stopped her. She thought about every time she'd been accused of getting by on sympathy, on special treatment, on anything except her own merit. If she reported Hollis, some would say she'd played the victim, that she couldn't handle the pressure. No, she'd beat him another way. No, ma'am, Emily said. Equipment fails sometimes. It's part of the job. The general studied her for a long moment. And you continued the mission anyway? Yes, ma'am. Why? Because my job is to protect the breach teams, ma'am. Radio or no radio, that doesn't change. The general almost smiled. How many targets did you engage? 12, ma'am. And how many did you hit? 12, ma'am. The general turned to one of her aides. I want to see the recorded feed from all the cameras. Every angle. And I want a full debrief from the breach teams. Yes, ma'am. An hour later, the observer team gathered in the operations center to review the footage. Emily sat in the back of the room. Hollis several rows ahead, the rest of the unit scattered throughout. The footage played on multiple screens. It showed everything. The breach teams moving in. The simulated threats appearing. And Emily, visible on the rooftop camera, engaging target after target with mechanical precision. But what stood out wasn't just her shooting. It was her tactical awareness. The footage showed threats that the breach teams never saw. Flanking positions, sniper nests, ambushes. Emily had identified and neutralized them all before they could become problems. The Special Forces team leader, watching the footage, shook his head in amazement. She saved our asses at least 4 times, he said. We never even knew those threats were there. The general stood. Staff Sergeant Cross, front and center. Emily stood and walked to the front of the room, every eye on her. That, the general said, pointing at the screen, is what excellence looks like. Not just marksmanship, though your shooting is exceptional, but tactical thinking, situational awareness, adaptability under pressure. She paused. You had every reason to abort when your radio failed. It would have been the safe choice, the defensible choice, but you stayed in the fight. Just doing my job, ma'am. No, the general said firmly. You went beyond your job. You demonstrated the kind of initiative and skill that this army needs. She glanced at Colonel Ryder. Colonel, I'm recommending Staff Sergeant Cross for the Distinguished Service Medal. A murmur went through the room. Furthermore, the general continued, I want her considered for the Special Operations Sniper course. If she's this good now, imagine what she could do with advanced training. Emily's breath caught. The Special Operations course was the pinnacle. The dream. Yes, ma'am, Colonel Ryder said, a hint of pride in his voice. I'll submit the paperwork immediately. The general turned back to Emily. Any questions, Staff Sergeant? No, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Dismissed. As the room emptied, Hollis remained in his seat, his face ashen. He'd tried to sabotage her, and instead he'd given her a stage to shine. Hayes approached Emily in the hallway, grinning. Holy crap, Emily, Special Operations. Maybe, Emily said, trying to keep the emotion out of her voice. It's just a recommendation. Still, that's huge. He hesitated. What Hollis did? Are you going to report it? Emily glanced back toward the operations center. Through the window, she could see Hollis sitting alone, head in his hands. No, she said quietly. Why not? Because he's already lost. He just doesn't know it yet. That evening, Colonel Ryder called Emily to his office one more time. Close the door, he said. She did. I know what Hollis did, the colonel said without preamble. Emily said nothing. I had the radio analyzed. The battery was intentionally discharged and replaced. There's a security camera in the equipment room. I reviewed the footage. Emily's heart sank. Sir, the colonel held up a hand. I'm not asking you to confirm or deny. I'm telling you what I know. He leaned forward. I also know you chose not to report it. Why? Emily thought carefully before answering. Because reporting it would make this about him, sir. About what he did to me. I wanted this to be about what I did. About my performance, Colonel Ryder nodded slowly. And what happens to Hollis? That's your call, sir. But if you're asking my opinion, he needs to live with what he did. He needs to watch me succeed knowing he tried to make me fail. That's a heavier punishment than any formal discipline. The colonel was quiet for a moment. Then he opened a drawer and pulled out a file. Your orders, he said, sliding it across the desk. You shipped a special operations training in 6 weeks. Congratulations, Staff Sergeant. Emily opened the file, her hands trembling slightly. It was real. It was actually happening, thank you, sir. One more thing, the colonel said. That general? She asked me about you after the debrief. Wanted to know your story. I told her about your father, about your record, about every obstacle you've overcome. He paused. She said something I thought you should hear. What's that, sir? She said, men like Hollis are why we need women like Cross. Not despite the resistance she faces, but because of it. She's been forged in a fire that would break most soldiers. That makes her dangerous. That makes her invaluable. Emily felt emotion welling up in her chest. She fought it down. Thank you for telling me that, sir. You earned it, Cross, every bit of it. He stood and extended his hand. Your father would be proud. Emily shook his hand, her grip firm. I hope so, sir. 6 weeks later, Emily stood in the parking lot outside her barracks, loading her gear into her truck. She was heading to Fort Bragg for special operations training. The dream she'd chased for 10 years was finally within reach. Hayes came to see her off, along with a handful of other soldiers from the unit. They'd grown to respect her. Some had even become friends. Gonna miss having you on Overwatch, Hayes said. You'll do fine without me. Not as fine as with you. He grinned. Kick ass down there, okay? That's the plan. As she climbed into her truck, she saw a figure standing near the barracks entrance. Hollis. He didn't approach. Didn't wave. Just stood there watching. Their eyes met for a moment. Emily saw something in his expression. Not quite respect. Not quite apology. But acknowledgement. He knew what he'd done. And he knew she'd beaten him anyway. She gave him a single nod. Then she started the engine and drove away. 3 years later, Emily Cross stood on a ridge in the mountains of Afghanistan. She wore the patch of the 75th Ranger Regiment on her shoulder, the Special Operations tab on her chest. She'd graduated top of her class from sniper school. She'd become exactly what she'd set out to be. Through her scope, she watched a compound 2,000 meters away. Intelligence said a high-value target was inside. Her mission was to confirm and, if necessary, eliminate. She'd done this 100 times now. Maybe more, but it never got old. Her spotter, a seasoned operator named Martinez, lay beside her. Wind's picking up, he said. I see it, Emily replied calmly. A figure emerged from the compound. Emily zoomed in. Checked the photo on her datapad. Positive match. I have confirmation, she said into her radio. Target acquired. You have the green light, Reaper 6, came the reply. They'd started calling her Reaper after her rifle. The name stuck. Emily's breathing slowed. The world narrowed. 2,000 meters. Wind gusting left to right. Temperature dropping. Target moving. She calculated, adjusted, compensated. And then she remembered something her father had told her when she was 12 years old, sitting beside him at a range in rural Montana. The rifle doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't care what anyone thinks of you. It only cares if you respect it, if you do your job. You do that and the rifle will never let you down. Emily smiled. Dad, she whispered, this one's for you. She fired 2,000 meters away. The target dropped. Target eliminated, Martinez confirmed through his spotting scope. Perfect shot. Reaper 6, this is command. Confirmed kill, well done. Exfil in 30. Emily began breaking down her rifle, her movements practiced and efficient. Martinez looked at her with genuine admiration. You know, Reaper, there's a rumor going around about you. What's that? That you've never missed, not once. Not in training, not in combat. Emily smiled but said nothing. Is it true? She secured the last piece of her rifle in its case and looked at him. What do you think? She said. Martinez laughed. I think I'm glad you're on our side. They packed their gear and began the hike to the exfil point. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Emily thought about the journey that had brought her here. Every insult, every doubt, every obstacle. And she thought about Hollis, wherever he was now. She'd heard through the grapevine that he'd left the army, went to work private security somewhere. She felt no satisfaction in that. No vindication. She felt nothing about him at all, because in the end, he was just noise, and she'd learned long ago how to tune out the noise. Emily adjusted her pack and kept walking, her steps sure and steady. Behind her, the sun sank below the horizon. Ahead, the stars were beginning to appear. She was going home.